I begin to. I begin to.
Hey, hi there. So, I decided to make this video to talk about why I have a Wattpad account. So I'll be talking about how I started it, why I stopped writing, why I started writing again. So, about 4 years ago, I learned about Wattpad. I don't even remember who told me about it or if I saw it on the internet or something, but I learned about Wattpad, and at first, I just went on to read books. And you'd never believe it, the books that I started to research were books written by Shakespeare, classic novels, Oliver Twist, The Little Women, all those type of books. Annie and the Green Gables. Those are the books that I researched to read, not the new upcoming ones that everybody else was interested in. Books that I've never read and I have no access to. I think one of the first books I read it wasn't Anne of the Green Gables, it was another one. And then after I read those, I went into Christian romance novels, and those were really good. So it was so refreshing to go on Wattpad and see romance Christian novels. Anyways, so I got into the app, started reading, and then a thought came to me one day. Wattpad came out of me. I think I took a year off from writing. Like for one whole year, I couldn't write poetry, I couldn't write songs, I couldn't write anything. So when I eventually decided to start writing on Wattpad, the title of my book was Lost Things, and I decided to start writing that book because I saw a lot of things in my community among women issues, a lot of stuff being circulated. I knew of a lot of friends who went through a lot of heartache, a lot of loss, and I decided that I was going to use this platform to basically write about things that I wanted to say, or I didn't know how to really say it. I started writing Lost Things, and a lot of people, when they read the book, they ask like, what was your inspiration? Why did you start writing the book? But for me, it was just a lot of things coming together, a lot of things happening in society, and my own personal emotions. It's just like all of the experiences that you witness on earth, and people on a whole, they go through a lot of stuff. They just don't talk about it. So I decided, instead of just seeing these things happen, instead of just experiencing these things, I was going to write about it. Things. When I started to write Lost Things, I think I started out with a prologue, and it was basically just like an introduction of the main character, Exona, and it was a particular night that she experienced a little bit of unsettled interactions between herself and her boyfriend. I know a lot of women go through heartbreak, and I wanted to start with that to basically air out a lot of issues, wounds, personal wounds, and wounds I've known of based on interactions with friends and family. So the first part, on Wattpad they call different section parts. So the first part I wrote was like a prologue, and it basically described how she was feeling, how the main character was feeling at the time when the incident unfolded, some of her anxieties and all of that. And trust me, it was very hard for me to write because and you might not believe this, but it was hard for me to write because I was so afraid to open up. I don't know if all the other writers in the world have this particular issue. But for me, writing is kind of like opening up yourself to the world. You open yourself up and you reveal so many things about you, even though it's not factual. The point of the matter is, I was writing and it exposes that part of you that you want to keep hidden as a writer. Because when you're writing, you face a couple of things, like you're wondering, would people think this is sappy or too idiotic or uncalled for? So like you become so critical of your craft before you even begin to write. And I had to get over that, but I didn't quite get over that at first. When I started, like when I started, I wrote the first part, and I think it took a while. I would have to basically check. It took a while for me to actually continue writing, but that is how I got started, and that was 4 years ago. So I started writing Lost Things 4 years ago. So let's pause there. Lost Things is not the only book I've ever written. The first time I started writing, I was in second form in high school, and writing a book about two African twins who had to leave Africa because their parents got a new job in the United States of America. And I based the story in Wisconsin, and a story about how they had to make choices in who they would be, if they would remain or stick to their African roots, as you might say, or be Americanized. So basically it was a book about teenagers and the choices of assimilation, the things that they had to deal with, like bullying, wanting to become a part of, and all of that. So that's my first book, and I wrote it in an actual book. It was one of those big mead books with the 5 partitions, and you know they used to come in those pretty colors like pink and neon yellow and green, and it was, everybody wanted to have a mead book. The one that said 5, was it a mead book or the one that said 5-star? I think it was either of them. And I would carry this thing around all the time, and I would hide it at home because, you know, this Jamaican girl writing stories about African things. But I was inspired to start that book because we had one of my classmates was actually from Zaire, and Zaire is now called the Republic of Congo. So it was once called Zaire, and they're a French-speaking country. And she came, and she basically became one of my close friends. So that African influence kind of just opened up my mind to the culture, and yeah. So that was actually the first book I ever conceptualized, and I don't think I gave it a name, but I knew that I was writing about twins, African twins. But yeah, something happened. I think it was one of those hurricanes, and it got destroyed, and I was so devastated, and I didn't think about writing from that point. I totally forgot about writing. At that time, I love going to the country, and my family is from Mandeville, so I love going to the country. And so I had a lot of childhood experiences in Mandeville, Broadleaf to be specific, and I started writing a book called On the Edge of Broadleaf. Now this book is so super important. So I fell in love with anything that Caribbean Writers series came up with. They were like everything. Yeah. So my second book idea, is actually called On the Edge of Broadleaf. Now, a lot of persons might know that in Jamaica, bauxite was a very important thing. Bauxite and sugar is basically most of the most important export crops or ventures, and a lot of communities got affected by bauxite mining, and one of those communities was actually from Mandeville, Manchester. So because my family came from that area, I decided to write a book about what happened to the land, and it came out of my history SBA as well, because I had did my topic from my history SBA was how the land was exploited. So the people were exploited during slavery, and the land was also exploited. I've always felt like I was one with nature, and I felt like there was a level of injustice happening to the land through bauxite mining and the displacement and all of that. Moving to when my third book idea was while I was attending Teachers College, and I decided that I wanted to write a book that influenced the younger generation. So the next book idea I thought about was basically to encourage students or children from like 6 to 8 years old to be helpful to their neighbors. So it's kind of like the Good Samaritan with a Jamaican Caribbean twist on it. So the book is entitled Brave Adventures of Hope. So the main character is a little tiny bird who witnesses the attack of like a unique bird, and the bird suffers greatly, and so Hope has to consult a wise owl. She has to consult a wise owl to actually find the ingredients needed to help the bird that was beat up. So that was the third book idea. Wait, first, second, third book idea. So Lost Things is basically the last book idea I've had. I want to actually finish all of the books I've mentioned except the first one, because I might leave that for last. Like I think I'll work through the Lost, and then while I'm writing the Lost, I'm going to be working on the Edge of Broadleaf. So I've already finished the Hope, but the drama of being a writer or an aspiring writer is always backing up your stuff. So writing is not easy. Writers have to face writer's block, but there are lots of things that you can do to overcome writer's block, and those are some of the things that I'll be doing with this particular channel. So stay tuned. I will be recording videos about the writing process, how the chapters are going, how the other books are going. I'll do this is kind of like just me vlogging about my writing process. So until next time, I'll see you again, guys.